All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen of Virginia Peninsula. This is Early Humanities 201 for spring 26. This is 12 week. Today is week 3 already. Wow, it's going by fast. And we are going to cover early and classical Greece. And the next week, there's actually 3 parts to Greece, and I think I made a mistake in the Canvas homepage because the lecture topic shows as Greece 3 parts, but that's for the 8 week class. Yours I'm breaking up into two. We're going to do earlier, it's archaic and classical Greece. Then next week we'll do the final one, Hellenistic Greece. So anyway, sorry about that. I'll change that. It'll be moot after this because I'm taking it out. Um, anyway, as I have told you, I'll give you notes before I do a lecture. I can't think of anything right now other than I think I'm caught up with grading. I think I am. I think I've done address your introductions and that I graded Mesopotamia. No, I haven't graded Mesopotamia and Egypt yet because that was due Monday. So I'll get to that this week. Okay, I'll get that graded for you so we're caught up. And those are the only notes I have for you, other than I know the campus was running late the other day for the weather Monday, and I hope that all of you are doing safe in the weather. I know that places up north of you in New England had like 2 and 3 foot of snow. The most I remember in Virginia was in 2004. I remember we had 18 inches the day after Christmas. And that was the deepest snow I remember in Virginia. It snowed other years I was there, but not to that degree. So I'm not sure what you folks are experiencing. But if the weather's inclement, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves. Okay. All right. So let's get into the lecture. I have to click this so you hear the videos. All right. So we are covering archaic and classical Greece. So archaic Greece. This is pretty much what the map looked like, the Mycenaean period. The places that we will focus on throughout this, all three of the Greek periods, are going to be Athens. You see almost dead center to the left of it, and a little bit lower is Mycenae. Later to become, I think that was Sparta, and then way up in the top right where it says Troy. And then way down at the bottom and towards the right of center is Kenosis. That's the island of Crete, and the Minoan civilization originated there, though I'm not sure we're covering the Minoans. We'll see. Uh, Mainly, we're focusing on um, this first part, archaic Greece. I have a feeling it's centered around Mycenae, not so much on Athens. Athens doesn't really come into the picture big time until classical period. But this is the one in which you have the Greeks in the battle with the Trojan War with the Troy, and you can see how far their ships must have been sent to engage in that war. And I'm not sure I have the slides for it, but that war began when Troy and Greece had experienced a peace treaty, and while the Trojans were in Greece signing this peace treaty, the one of the sons of the Trojan king fell in love with one of the wives of one of the Greek king, Menelaus, I think, Menelaus, and of his wife. So when the Trojans left, Paris, the son I'm talking about, the Trojan son, snuck Helen was her name, snuck her aboard the boat going back to Troy. And so it when the Greeks found out, they there's a famous phrase that goes the face that launched the thousand ships. It was said that Helen was a very beautiful woman, and her beauty is what riled up the Greeks to set off for Troy to engage in a 10-year war documented in Homer's Iliad. And then after 10 years, you're familiar with the Trojan horse, and that the Greeks finally destroyed Troy. And then the king Odysseus, who was the one who conceived of the Trojan horse, he and his crew took another 10 years to get back home, and all of his adventures. And that's the Odyssey. So if you've read Homer, you've read the Iliad and the Odyssey. There's many variations of that. Brad Pitt did one a number of years ago called Troy, and I'm sure the critics say there was a lot of literary license used with that. Okay, fair enough. And here is Homer's book, The Iliad and the Odyssey. It's been a long, long time since I've read that, so I kind of rely on movies to help refresh my memory now. There is a movie it's called The Odyssey, and the actor's name, I can't remember it offhand. He does a great job. Um, oh gosh, I can't remember his name or when this was done, but it's called The Odyssey, and it depicts his journey back to his wife. It's a very good story. Let's take a look. So during the during the Archaic period is when the Greeks invented the Olympian deities. In a way, they took the place of what today we would call God or Allah, depending on which faith you are. Although, if you're a Christian or Muslim or Jewish person, your faith in a single God is much different than the development of the 12 deities, or there were many deities in ancient Greece. But the way that we look upon the God today is how the Greeks looked upon the deities in their time. The difference is that the Greeks imbued the Olympian deities with too many human characteristics. So, for instance, if you look at the top left up there, you see Zeus and then Hera. Well, Hera was both his sister and his wife, and Zeus was said to have enjoyed transforming himself. He was a what do they call that, shapeshifter, into a human male so that he could have intimate relations with human females. God would not do such a thing. That's the distinction here I'm making. And of course, then each one of these gods, and you have, where's Ares, the god of war? Yeah. If you've seen Clash of the Titans or Wrath of the Titans, you know the character playing Ares is just very bitter and angry and warlike. He takes it to the extreme. And so you have these gods and goddesses that represent various aspects of life, and they help answer the mysteries of life. So you can't really blame the Greeks, except that once they developed them, they put themselves in the hands of these gods like puppets. They did. And so anything that happened in their lives, instead of trying to look at it logically, they would either blame the gods for it or praise the gods for it. So let's take a look at this short video on the
GreekMythology.com presents the 12 Olympian gods. Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the Olympian goddess of love, beauty and fertility. Even though married to Hephaestus, she had affairs with all Olympians except Zeus and Hades, most famously with Ares, the god of war. Apollo. Apollo is the Olympian god of the sun and light, music and poetry, healing and knowledge, order and beauty, archery and agriculture. An embodiment of the Hellenic ideal of Kolokagathia, he is harmony, reason and moderation personified, a perfect blend of physical superiority and moral virtue. Ares. Ares is the Olympian god of war, the personification of sheer violence and brutality. He was disliked by gods and men. Even Zeus calls him the most hateful of all the gods, remarking that if he hadn't been his son, he would have surely ended up in Tartarus with Cronus and the Titans. Artemis. Artemis is the Olympian goddess of the hunt, the moon, and chastity. In time, she also became associated with childbirth and nature. She is the mistress of animals, the she of the wild. As a great huntress, she is also referred to as arrow pouring or deer shooting. Athena. Athena is the Olympian goddess of wisdom and war and the adored patroness of the city of Athens. As a war goddess associated with wisdom, Athena was often the main helper of ancient Greece's greatest heroes such as Odysseus, Heracles, Perseus, Jason and others. Hades. Hades is the ancient Greek god of the underworld, the place where human souls go after death. In time, his name became synonymous with his realm. He frequently wears a helmet, named the Helm of Darkness or the Cap of Invisibility. Cerberus, the three-headed dog which guarded the entrance to the underworld, is usually beside him. Hephaestus. Hephaestus, the celestial artificer, is the god of blacksmiths and fire. Even though an ugly god lamed by his own mother, he was the husband of none other than Aphrodite herself. Hera. Hera is the wife of Zeus, the queen of Olympus, and the Olympian goddess of marriage. As such, she is also the deity most associated with family and the welfare of women and children. Her marriage, however, was an unhappy one, since Zeus had numerous affairs. Jealous and vengeful, Hera made sure to give each of his consorts some hard time. Hermes. Hermes is the winged herald and messenger of the Olympian gods. In addition, he is also a divine trickster, and the god of roads, flocks, commerce, and thieves. A precocious newborn, he invented the lyre and stole Apollo's cattle on the very first day of his life. Hermes was the only Olympian capable of crossing the border between the living and the dead. Hestia. Hestia is the Greek goddess of the hearth, one of the original 12 Olympians. Cronus and Rhea's firstborn child, she was pure and peaceful. Since she always had to stay at home, tending the fireplace, Hestia is not involved in many myths. Poseidon. Poseidon is the violent and ill-tempered god of the sea. One of the 12 Olympians, he was also feared as the provoker of earthquakes and worshipped as the creator of the horse. A hot-blooded deity, Poseidon had many disputes with both gods and men, most famously with Athena and Odysseus. Zeus. Zeus is the Olympian god of the sky and the thunder, the king of all other gods and men. Considered the ruler of heavens and the governor of weather, Zeus was also associated with wisdom and awareness, with authority and destiny, with battles and power. Learn more at GreekMythology.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Greek mythology.
Okay, so you can see how the Greeks they imbued each of these characters with very specific human characteristics and connections to earth and nature, etc. Music, animals, insects, human emotions. They're all filled with these very specific characteristics, which I suppose brought comfort to the ancient Greeks. Although, when they move into the classical period, the Hellenistic period, the Greeks, even though they still honor the gods and goddesses, they start moving away and start celebrating themselves more as human beings. At what they consider is a risk of the wrath of the gods and goddesses. In fact, if you've seen the Clash of the Titans with Sam, is it Sam Worthington? I think, I can't remember who is the main actor in this. He's a demigod. His father is Zeus. His mother is human. He is also in a second movie called The Wrath of the Titans, which is the wrath of the gods, where the gods are sort of fighting each other and humans and everybody. They're excellent movies. I'm not promoting them. I don't have stock in them, but if you ever have a chance to see Clash and Wrath, they're both from around 2010, 12, 14, somewhere in there. And Clash was actually based on an original movie made in the 1960s, I think, of the same name, Clash of the Titans. So this is the invention of the deities.
Greek mythology.
Important. So now we're moving along fast here. Sorry, there are other aspects I could cover, but let's cover classical Greece. And we see that we're going to cover arts and drama here. And at this point, we cover the three most well-known Greek playwrights. There were others, and there was a fourth one that should be added to this list. These were the three tragedians, and there was one who focused mainly on comedies. His name was Aristophanes. And the first one is Aeschylus or Aeschylus, depending on how you pronounce it. His most famous play, it's actually three plays in one, called the Oresteia. Euripides with Medea, and then Sophocles is the one I know the best and prefer him among the three. He wrote Oedipus the King, which is a very interesting play, and I think I have a clip of his. These are the Greek theater. I think I have a clip from his play Antigone. But you have to imagine the Greek plays were usually performed as part of a week-long or 2-week-long or month-long festival called the Dionysia. And this was a celebration of the god Dionysus. And there was religious festivals and ceremonies, but there were also, this is when the Greek playwrights would shine. And most of the Greek playwrights were from professional families. There were some were actors. and they recruited professional actors for the plays. There were generally only few characters, three or four characters on the stage who had to play all the roles, and so they used these masks, whether it was men or women. The Greeks also employed a very interesting technique called the chorus. I've used this, in fact, in some of at least one of the plays I did many years ago. The chorus was usually made up of a group, maybe 10 or 12 individuals. Sometimes they were in the military because they learned to function together. They moved together, they spoke together, they sung together. And sometimes they served as a voice of reason for the audience. So if the audience was watching a play unfold and they couldn't quite make out what the characters were doing, or if the characters seemed a little bit crazy to them, the chorus could serve as a voice of reason and sort of explain why the actor may have been behaving in such a way. But these are some of the masks that they would use. And of course, the fascinating part is that Greek theater was mostly performed outdoors, and sometimes their amphitheaters could hold 12, 14,000 people. How did their voices without microphone amplification? In fact, my son and I just attended a play here weeks ago that was performed indoors, and every one of the actors had a head microphone. Otherwise, and we sat in the front row. And I would imagine people up in the back might not have been able to hear them singing and talking if it weren't for those microphones. So, what I have read is that some historians believe that in some cases the materials used to build the amphitheaters was built of materials that could carry the sound up to the top rows. That I don't know for sure. And this is what the Greek amphitheater looks like. So you can see the stage unfolding, you can see the action unfolding down below, and you see the seats, the amphitheater seats, with the buildings and the mezzanine. No, there's a name for that background. I can't remember what it is. But this is where all the action took place. And sometimes they had ex machina. The gods would come in on mechanical devices above them if there was a god in the play. Yeah. So they're saying the materials used in those plays, and they weren't very comfortable seats either, I'm sure. No cushion backs on them. Okay. Oh, yeah, I do have a scene from a very famous play, Antigone. Let me just unfold this for you. I think it's the one that I hope it's the one I'm thinking of. Oh, wait a minute. This is the whole play. I don't want this one. Hang on. Hang on just a second. I need to scroll to the point where I can play this for you. Yeah.
Πώς να το πω, λυπήθηκα κιόλας.
Okay. Oh, and there's no captions.
Γιατί όσο κι αν είναι ευχάριστο να γλιτώσω
Oh.
από κάθε βαριά κατηγορία.
Oh, yeah, there are captions. Okay, let me just, if you're unfamiliar with Antigone, many of you have read this or seen it in high school, but if you haven't, Antigone is a woman, and she has a sister and two brothers. Their father was Oedipus. Remember, I showed you the king Oedipus with Sophocles. This is also by Sophocles. Oedipus is dead, and now his brother Creon has taken over the kingdom of Thebes. Well, unfortunately, there's a civil war going on, and what Creon has declared is that anybody who fights for him and dies will be given full burial rights, but anybody who fights against him and dies is he is left for the animals to tear apart. No formal burial rights. Well, what's happened is Ismene is Antigone's sister. The two of them have two brothers, and both brothers have died, and one fought for the king and one fought against Creon. And so the one brother, I can't remember the one brother's name, Edicles, I think, is the one who fought for the king. He's given full burial rights, but the other one is left to rot. Well, Antigone believes in a higher authority, the authority of the gods, that command her to perform the burial rites of her brother, which she does. And she's caught by the soldiers. And so what happens is the soldiers bring her before the king. And so this scene unfolds. It's the dialogue or the discussion between Antigone and King Creon. And what I want you to pay attention to is their body movements, their eyes contact, and their blocking, their positioning, where Antigone is below a Creon, but she is the one who's definitely the stronger of the two because she is speaking from a position of truth and conviction. Creon's the one who's pacing back and forth with his arms folded. He's the one who seems to be unsure, and his main weakness is pride that leads to something else later in the play that's not very good. And the complication is that his son is engaged to Antigone. And so let this scene unfold. Try to follow the captions. The actress is Irene Pappas. She's a very well-known actress. She's Greek, and so this is a Greek play. It's in Greek. That's why there's captions. But try to look at the dynamics between her and Creon, and you see which one is the stronger and which one is the weaker.
Άλλο τόσο είναι λυπητερό πράγμα να σέρνω στη συμφορά ένα αγαπημένο μας πρόσωπο. Πάντως, μπροστά στη δική μου σωτηρία δεν μετράει τίποτα.
Και τώρα εσύ. Εσένα μιλάω που μου χαμηλώνεις τα μάτια στη γη. Ομολογείς ή αρνείσαι πως έκανες αυτά που λέει?
Τα ομολογώ. Και ούτε σκέφτηκα ποτέ μου να τα αρνηθώ.
Εσύ πήγαινε όπου σ' αρέσει. Είσαι ελεύθερος από κάθε κατηγορία. Και τώρα απάντησέ μου εσύ. Σύντομα και χωρίς πολλά λόγια. Ήξερες τη διαταγή μου να μην θάψουν τον νεκρό?
Το ξέρα.
Και μόνο τούτο τόλμησες να παραβείς τους νόμους μου?
Δεν με διέταξε ο Δίας. Ούτε οι θεοί του κάτω κόσμου μας όρισαν τέτοιους νόμους. Κι ούτε φαντάστηκα ποτέ πως οι διαταγές σου θα έχουν τέτοια δύναμη, ώστε να μπορείς εσύ ένας θνητός να ξεπεράσεις τους άγραφτους και ασάλευτους θεϊκούς νόμους, που δεν είναι ούτε σημερινοί, ούτε χθεσινοί, μα αιώνιοι. Και κανείς μας δεν ξέρει από πότε υπάρχουν. Δεν λυπάμαι που θα πεθάνω. Αν όμως άφηνα ακίδευτο τον αδερφό μου, γι' αυτό ναι, θα λυπόμουν. Σου φαίνομαι άμυαλη, δεν είναι έτσι? Δεν ξέρω όμως ποιος πραγματικά από τους δυο μας είναι ο άμυαλος.
Σκληρός ο χαρακτήρας του παιδιού, σαν του πατέρα της. Δεν έμαθε να λυγάει μπροστά στη δυστυχία.
Μα την αλήθεια, αυτή θα είναι άντρας και εγώ θα είμαι γυναίκα, αν μπορεί έτσι ατιμόρυτα να ποδοπατάει τη βασιλική μου εξουσία. Κι αν είναι της αδερφής μου παιδί και η πιο στενή μου συγγενής, δεν πρόκειται να γλιτώσει τη θανατική ποινή. Ούτε αυτή, ούτε η αδερφή της Ισμήνη. Γιατί και εκείνη το ίδιο την κατηγορώ με τούτην εδώ, πως μαζί προμελετήσανε την ταφή του νεκρού. Φωνάχτε τι έξω κι αυτήν. Μα πιο πολύ συχαίνω με αυτόν που πιάνεται πάνω στο έγκλημα και προσπαθεί να παραστήσει το θύμα με τα μεγάλα λόγια.
Σκότωσέ με λοιπόν. Τι άλλο θέλεις παραπάνω?
Τίποτε άλλο δεν θέλω. Μου φτάνει αυτό.
Τότε μην αργείς. Όσο για τους νόμους, ούτε τους παραδέχομαι, ούτε εύχομαι να υπάρξει άνθρωπος που να τους παραδεχτεί. Γιατί ποια μεγαλύτερη τιμή μπορούσα να είχα παρά να κυδέψω τον αδερφό μου. Όλοι ετούτοι είναι με το μέρος μου και θα στο λέγανε καθαρά αν δεν τους έδινε τη γλώσσα ο φόβος. Αλλά μόνο οι βασιλιάδες έχουν το προνόμιο να κάνουν και να λένε ό,τι τους αρέσει.
Φωνάκι σου μέσα σε ολάκερη θύμα πιστεύεις πως έχεις δίκιο?
Το πιστεύουν και τούτοι, αλλά μπροστά σου σωπαίνουν.
Ντροπή σου! Γιατί ετούτοι βέβαια δεν συμφωνάνε μαζί σου.
Δεν πέθανε κανένας δούλος, μα ο αδερφός μου.
Πολεμώντας την πατρίδα του, ενώ ο άλλος πέθανε υπερασπίζοντάς την.
Στον Άδη οι νεκροί έχουν όλοι τους ίδιους νόμους.
Μα όχι και την ίδια κρίση ο καλός από τον κακό.
Ποιος ξέρει αν αυτά έχουν πέρασει εκεί κάτω.
Δεν γίνεται φίλος ο εχθρός, μήτε στον κάτω κόσμο, ούτε και αγαπημένος.
Εγώ δεν γεννήθηκα για να μισώ.
Κι εγώ ήμουνα μαζί της, αν το ομολογεί και εκείνη. Και δέχομαι την ίδια ευθύνη.
Η δικαιοσύνη των θεών δεν θα σε αφήσει να πεις τέτοιο ψέμα. Γιατί ούτε εσύ το θέλησες, ούτε εγώ σε πήρα μαζί μου.
Θα είμαι περήφανη να μοιραστώ τη συμφορά σου και να πάθω ό,τι είναι να πάθεις κι εσύ.
Ποιος έκανε την ταφή το ξέρουν εκείνοι που βρίσκονται στον άλλο κόσμο. Και αυτήν που τους αγαπάει μόνο με τα λόγια, εγώ δεν θέλω ούτε να την ξέρω.
Αδελφούλα μου, μη μου αρνιέσαι την τιμή να πεθάνω μαζί σου. Και έτσι να ξυλωθώ κι εγώ απέναντι στον νεκρό αδερφό μου.
Εκείνα που δεν άγγιξες μην τα θέλεις δικά σου. Και ούτε υπάρχει λόγος να χαθείς κι εσύ μαζί μου. Φτάνει ο δικός μου θάνατος.
Άμα μου λείψεις εσύ, τι θέλω πια τη ζωή.
Ρώτα τον Γκρέοντα. Εσύ που τον λογαριάζεις.
Από τις δυο αδερφάδες η μια τρελάθηκε τώρα. Μα η άλλη φαίνεται πως είναι τρελή από τον καιρό που γεννήθηκε.
Το μυαλό σαλεύει, βασιλιά, όταν σε βρει το κακό.
Και το δικό σου σάλεψε από τη στιγμή που σκέφτηκες να γίνει συνένοχη με τους κακούς.
Μα πες μου, για ποιο λόγο θα ζήσω εγώ χωρίς ετούτην εδώ.
Μη λες ετούτην εδώ. Γιατί ετούτη δεν υπάρχει πια.
Μα θα σκοτώσεις την αρμονιαστιά του γιού σου.
Αυτός να βρει άλλο χωράφι για να σπείρει.
Μα στα αλήθεια, θα στερήσεις από το σπλάχνο σου την αγαπημένη του.
Ήταν γραφτό αυτό το γάμο να το σταματήσει ο Άδης.
Oh boy.
Πάρτε τις χώρια την καθεμιά και φυλακίστε τις. Γιατί αυτοί που κάνουν το γενναίο δεν τα έχουν σε τίποτα να φύγουν. Μόλις δουν να κοντοζυγώνει ο θάνατος.
Okay, that's all of the scene I want to play. The whole play is here if you choose to watch it. So what I wanted to point out to you is that one of the overriding themes of this play is pride. You can see the pride on Creon's part. He actually stands above Antigone, but he is the weaker of the two in the argument. He's the one yelling. She does raise her voice, but if you watch her closely enough, you see her eyes. She's very focused on him. She has the conviction that she's following the law of the gods and not man by burying her brother. And you see the king is the one pacing back and forth and crossing his arms. She stands very still. And again, he stands above her, but he is the weaker of the two. I don't want to tell you any more about this, but I bring this out because when you watch anything, a movie or a play or some kind of story, a visual story, you can look at the characters and sort of start discerning how they're reacting to each other and what kind of personalities they're portraying, given certain tense situations like this one. And of course, the complicating factor is that here's Haman, the one in white in the center, returning home. He's engaged to Antigone, and yet his father has condemned her to death. So it's a great play. So it's one of my favorites. So something else related to classical Greece is their architectural design. All of the buildings in ancient Greece were expressing classical Greece values of the time, which were perfection and beauty, perspective and harmony, all kinds of values that led to a beautiful looks, if you want to. And one of those was in architecture. So they developed these three architectural orders, the Doric, the Ionic, and the Corinthian, for columns. So whenever a building was constructed, they didn't need an architect. They only needed a contractor because all the buildings were pretty much looking the same to fit those classical values. The only thing that might change is the type of column that was used. The Doric was the earliest. It was the shortest of the three, and very plain at the top, and then they became a little bit more decorative with the Ionic scroll, and of course then the most decorative one is the Corinthian with the floral design at the top. So when you're out and about, if you happen to see any columns that look Greek on buildings, especially museums and judicial buildings, libraries sometimes, if they're large enough in larger cities, if you see a column, take a quick look at the top and see if you can identify the type of order it is, because The Greek order is still used today, even in modernized buildings. So this is something to keep in mind, this order of architectural design. And then the Greeks also, this is where they're starting to celebrate human beings. And they began actually in the Archaic period with a statue called the Kurus boy, but it was not near what the quality of what you see here. So if you look at these, what you're looking at is the perfection of the human body. By this period, you can see the men have developed their muscles and the beauty of their body form. And don't be offended by the nudity. This was very, very common in ancient Greece, especially for the men. And he has the six pack. And if you look at the faces of all these individuals, all five of them, you see that they're very beautiful faces. And so this was another way that the Greeks invested in their classical values, is through their sculpture. And I'm pointing this out because by the time we get to Hellenistic period, you're going to see something very, very different in the way that sculpture was viewed. But for now, you see the classical period with the beauty, the harmony, the perfection. And, is it any different than we have today, where we have our males with the body of the males and the females becoming models? No, it's about the same. Yeah. I know we're getting away from that, but the fashion industry still kind of clings to the idea of the body perfection. And this is it during the classical period of Greece. So let's take a look at, I want you to pay attention to this young man who's delivering a lecture outside in front of a building, I'm guessing in Washington, D.C. And while he's speaking, see if you can identify the column top above, behind him. But I also want you to pay attention to what he has. There was a Greek philosopher named Protagoras who made the statement, man is the measure of all things. Now, there's various interpretations on what that means, but the way that this young man opens up the interpretations of Protagoras' statement, you begin to understand more about how we can work with other people who think differently than we do. And I point this one out because whether you want to agree or not, we're living in a very divided country right now. Us and them. And I'm not going to get into the politics. That's not my place. You have your own opinions and you're very entitled to them. But the reality is we are in a point of conflict in this country. And one of the ways that we can lessen the intensity between people who think differently is to pay attention to this commentary on Protagoras. So I'll play this. It's very good. Just listen to everything he has to say.
Protagoras was one of the great sophists.
What kind of column is that?
Now, the sophistic movement was a movement that was posited on the thought that individuals could have a life and create a life by way of cultivating certain kinds of skills. In particular, skills of being able to speak clearly and argue and outthink everybody else around you. The crucial thing with the sophists is that it was about certain kinds of individual skills, skills that you carried by yourself. Now, Protagoras had two really big ideas that ended up being very influential. One of them is that man is the measure of all things. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, one interpretation is a kind of relativism, that how we judge things is the criterion for whether or not they are or whether or not they aren't, what they are. But another idea behind Protagoras' man is the measure view is that in some ways the thing that we need to be figuring out is how we judge, how we think things through, how we agree on things, that we in fact are the measure for our purposes. And so being able to work out what we're doing when we make judgments is the crucial thing to being able to be a good sophist. Be able to work with others, to be able to get ahead in your life, is really one about being able to figure out how we make judgments. That leads us to Protagoras' second big idea. And it was that to every view, there's an opposing view.
Right.
And Protagoras' thought is that there's no place where humans go.
Yep.
So long as we're the measure, there's no place that we go where there's not going to be disagreement.
Yep.
Where somebody else is going to be like, yeah, not so much. And that's a big idea. But the second following feature of this is that that's not just the idea. Remember that the sophists were about acquiring skills. And the skill that Protagoras had in mind was the skill of being able to identify the multiple sides on any issue. Be able to say, I understand that side, and that the skill that he wanted you to be able to instill, he wanted to instill in his students, was to be able to, quote, make the weaker argument the stronger. Now, what's that mean? Being able to make the weaker argument the stronger, and that skill means being able to take any controversy and to be able to say, hey man, we're filming outside. To be able to say, I understand this controversy and I can understand where the other side is coming from. And I can be able to say their view better than anyone else has been able to say it. That's a unique kind of skill, and a skill of being able to deepen your understanding of every issue. Now, the crucial thing is that there's also a weird underbelly to this.
Yep.
And the underbelly worry is this underbelly that if everything's controversial, then nothing's easy. Then there are no clear truths. Then you might say everything's debatable, everything's negotiable. And if that's the case, it looks like all the clear and bright lines that we have for reality, for morality, are erased. And one worry about Protagoras is this reversion to relativism again. That if you can make the weaker argument the stronger, then who's to say anything? Then it's just about getting ahead. Then it's just about winning the next argument. That was Plato's worry about the sophists. But one of the crucial things is that even if Plato's right about the sophists still had a deep understanding of something. Controversy is something that follows human judgment everywhere. That we can't get away with it. I can't get away from it. Controversy is something that follows us everywhere. And being able to understand things appropriately requires that we be able to understand all the various perspectives on the controversy. It may in the end be that there's one right answer, but the path to it requires that we master all of the perspectives on it.
Okay, master all the perspectives. I don't think he's saying that he believes there is no truth, but he's saying this is one of the alternatives to Protagoras' interpreting Protagoras' statement. So if you believe one thing and you're in a debate with someone who believes something entirely different, it's okay that each of you has your own a basis of truth, that you believe what you believe. But instead of pushing each other's buttons and arguing to win, what he's suggesting is you try and learn more about what the other person is saying, and try to learn more about that perspective that other person is talking about, so that you come to some type of agreement without shooting each other or getting into a fist fight, if that makes any sense. So I think, overall, what the philosophers had from ancient times had to say to us today is very, very important, especially this one by Protagoras and others. But this one, I just really appreciate what this guy is saying, because I have I have my political opinions, but if I'm engaged in a conversation with someone who thinks differently, I don't want it to descend into a big brawl or a big shouting match. I want to be able to understand that person so that I can understand why they think the way they do, and I also would like them to understand the way I think. It brings for peace, even if you're on opposite sides of the fence. All right, so here are the three great philosophers. I showed you Protagoras. Now we come to Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, and that's the end of the slideshow. So I won't say too much about these other than these three reflected, again, the Greek classical values in different ways. Socrates was the head of these three. His path to understanding truth was to speak to people in the city of Athens. And he was the one who was like a 4-year-old child. For every question that they answered for him, he would say, why? And the reason he was doing this is because he wanted people he was interviewing to get down into the basic reasons why they believe certain things. Plato was a student of, and Socrates wrote down nothing. Plato had to do all of this. Plato was a student of his. Plato dealt more in the sense of idealisms, that he could come to an ideal way that people should believe and function, and he expressed that keenly in, I think that might be part of your. Do I give you an essay? Let me see. Course essay. I'm not sure what topic I have for your class, if your essay, but if it's the one I'm thinking of, you are going to be looking at Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Plato wrote an essay called the Allegory of the Cave. It's a wonderful depiction of enlightenment and coming to the light and understanding something in a very idealistic way. It's an experience I had when I was in college. And then Aristotle was more scientific. Aristotle was a student of Plato's. He was more empirical, scientific. He has an essay called "The High-Minded Man," and in it, he describes how an individual can behave and speak and function, and walk, and what he would eat, etc. All the little details to make a person high-minded. Where uh, I don't think Aristotle did that. I'm trying to think of his. What was the famous book he wrote? Oh, I can't remember. Sorry. Yesterday was a very long day. But anyway, these were the three great philosophers of the classical period. Okay, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We could go on to do a lot more, but if you want more of this, you can research on your own the classical period. There's so much more. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I put Greek three periods or three parts. That's not correct. So next week we'll do the Hellenistic world. Okay. Excuse me. I have a fan running. All right, so next week will be our last lecture before spring break, and then after spring break, I'll fill out the rest of this for the rest of the 12 weeks with your lecture schedule and your assignments. All right, so let me go and take a look at your assignment. Weekly assignment modules. Actually, I need to. What did I do here? Uh, no one has done this assignment yet. Let me change this, okay? I have an assignment for the classical and the Greek period, and this one's not it. This covers all three. So I will change that today. So I think what I'm going to do, don't be alarmed by this, but I think what I'm going to do is unpublish this one so you can't see it. And then I'll change that today. I'll change that today to the correct assignment for this topic. All right. So have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday at 10:30 again for your lecture on the Hellenistic period. All right. So have a great week, folks. If you need to get a hold of me, remember I have an office hour for you on Tuesdays at 10:30 as well. Feel free to drop in if you need to, or I try to get to your emails as quickly as I can. So thank you very much. Have a good week, folks.